So you went and got yourself a law degree. Congratulations, and welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to teach lawyers how to work in their gift and live their passions. Together with my guests, we provide knowledge, insight, skills, inspiration, and the encouragement you need to find your happy. I'm super excited to share today's interview with you. I chat with Alicia Chen, who's in-house at On Deck, the largest online small business lender in the U.S. Alicia gives us the inside scoop on making the jump in-house and what she wishes she'd known earlier in her career. So let's get to the show. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you joining me on the show today.
Thanks, Okoma. Excited to be chatting with you as well.
Great. I usually like to start the show with having my guests tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are and what you're doing today.
Sure. So why don't I start with what I'm doing today? So I work in-house at a company called On Deck Capital. We make small business loans. It's a great place to work. I love it. It's full of fun people. It's in the fintech industry, which is, super exciting right now. A lot of changes happening in finance, kind of powered by technology. And it's exciting to be at a company that's sort of at the forefront of that. To go through the journey a little bit, after law school, I went to, sure. Please.
Did anybody from your company go to FinCon?
Yes, I know some people did. I think probably on the business development side. They're usually the ones that get to go to all the fun conferences.
Yeah. I went to FinCon this year. That's why I was asking. I'm like such a fan.
Oh, nice.
And it's in Dallas next year.
Well, you should. Oh, okay. I have to finagle my way to one of those conferences.
Yes,
that would be cool.
FinCon is fantastic. So I was gonna plug FinCon to you. If you have a way to get there, you should. It's super fun.
All right. I'm glad you told me that. I'll look into it.
All right. So let's start with I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Why did you go to law school? Where did you go? And then how did you end up,
Sure.
to On Deck?
So I went to law school back in Toronto, Canada, which is where I'm from. There isn't a great reason for why I went to law school. It just kind of seemed like the next thing to do. I wasn't sure where to go post undergrad. The good news, though, was that I really liked law school. I really enjoyed the classes, met lots of interesting people. And then, not surprisingly, because I didn't know why I was going to law school, I didn't know what to do after either. So I went through the OCI process, and I was lucky because it was 2006 and the economy was doing well, and they were hiring people from all over to come to New York and work at, the big law firms. So I, along with, something like a third of my class, came down to New York, loved the summer program. How can you not? So much fun. And then I decided to come back, and I always figured it would be for a short period and I'd end up back in Toronto. But, I came back. Of course, life is very different as a real associate versus a summer associate. And it was kind of my first real job. So it was a big transition in that respect as well. But, I think I learned a lot at the first firm I went to. I really credit them for doing a good job with training, for instance. Not only did they do a lot of legal training, but they also kind of from the business side, put us through these like mini MBA programs, they called them, where we actually got to go to a university and take classes from professors who taught in the MBA program. So for me, that was totally new and really interesting. Just kind of matured a lot in terms of workplace stuff. I learned to be kind of accountable for the work I was doing, becoming a better lawyer as well. I'm not naturally that detail oriented of a person, but of course you have to be at a firm. And, it was crazy with the hours at times for sure, but there were also a lot of good things. And I got two very cool opportunities to do some pro bono work through secondments. One at the beginning through an organization called Latino Justice that worked on kind of impact litigation cases, working to kind of reverse discriminatory policies against Latinos, and also at an organization called Acumen Fund that works on investments in the social enterprise space with startups around the world. So those were really different and really interesting and kind of supplemented the time I spent at Milbank. And for me, because I still had no idea really the whole time I was there what I wanted to do, I was just trying to do kind of as much as possible. So those 2 3-month periods really helped me figure that out eventually. But after about 3.5 years at that first firm, I decided, I needed a change. I wanted to try something else. So I ended up switching firms. Before that, I did a secondment where I actually went abroad to Kenya and worked with an organization called Batana that kind of does crowdfunding for student loans. It's a model similar to like what Kiva does, but specific to like the student loans, post-secondary student loans area, which was really cool. Go ahead. Sorry.
Right? I think that
they do.
Yeah.
You are a finance nerd. I love it.
Oh, I'm a huge finance nerd. Don't even I love all this stuff. And I definitely, also, I've just spent so much time looking into all the different things people do that are cool. And I remember doing this and thinking, if I didn't have kids, I would be in Nairobi myself. But what was that time like?
It was amazing. It was my first time in Africa. It's an awesome place to go and live as an expat. It's really easy to meet people and everyone is doing such interesting stuff. The work was great. I got to work out of the office of like a smaller nonprofit based in Nairobi. It was a little short. Honestly, I wish it had been a bit longer, but because I actually had I was there for about 2.5 months.
Oh, okay. That is quick.
So by the time you get there and you start having conversations with people, it's like, oh gosh, I have to leave in a week. So the sense of timing is not the same as here. And it takes forever to set things up and figure out who the right people are to talk to with these post-secondary student loan conversations. But it was an awesome opportunity, not to mention you can go on safari one weekend, then go to the coast the next weekend. So the travel opportunities were pretty cool as well.
That's fantastic. And so while you were there, were you looking for another job or did you already have this other job lined up?
So being a risk-averse lawyer, I had the other job lined up before I even went.
You were doing this? So
They did. Yeah. It was kind of tough to explain why I'd want to do something like this, but they were, they were supportive. They understood that I'd just been at a job for 3.5 years and I wanted a bit of a break to try something different. So they were cool with it. So when I came back after that 3-month period, I started at the new firm, and I'm glad I switched because it's always good to know what you can kind of compare experiences to. And so if I'd only gone to the one firm, I wouldn't have really known if that's kind of how all firms are or not. So I'm glad I had that opportunity to have a comparison at least.
Ask if you had a clear criteria for what you were looking for in a new firm. I mean, so full disclosure, we started at the same firm. So, and I'm now also at the same firm. So I just am interested to know your process for thinking about a new firm and if there were particular things, like whether it was just changing practice groups or if it was different people or, if there were certain things you were looking for specifically.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think by this point, I was getting the feeling that I didn't want to be at a firm forever. Mm-hmm. I just thought, I guess there's a number of reasons. I kind of wanted to work with clients that I was just more excited about what they were doing. That was the main reason I was leaning toward in-house. But I think because I'd only been at a place for 3.5 years, I didn't really think I had the experience to go right to an in-house job. So I was trying to put myself in a position where I'd be able to do that. So that was part of it. I really liked, all those kind of other things I was talking about with the first firm. They had a lot of between the training and the pro bono opportunities, and it was a social place as well. I thought I really liked the people, but I felt like in terms of the actual work, it was often the case that I was staffed on these big deals with, 5 lawyers, and my role was pretty restrained, I guess. There was only a set kind of number of day-to-day tasks I was doing. So I wanted to have more of a leadership role at the new firm and kind of take on more responsibility, which worked out because the firm I went to had a much smaller finance group. I was doing finance, so I didn't change total practice areas, but I guess the type of finance was a little bit different. I just wanted kind of as different of an experience as possible so that I could help prepare myself for eventually, whether it was going in-house or doing something else. I figured the more variety, the better. But I'd say if there was one thing, it was probably this idea of having more responsibility, working on whether it was smaller deals or not, but just the opportunity to lead deals instead of just being one of many people working on transactions. Yeah,
for sure. It's good to get exposure, I think. And sometimes in those more hierarchical structures, it's hard to get the exposure you want to good work.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's right.
I've done a lot of research on happiness. And that's one of the things I think a lot of lawyers struggle with is that part of being happy is doing things you find challenging and accomplishing challenging things. And when you take people who their whole lives have been really striving for that like sense of reward, it can be really hard and stifling to go into a corporate environment where the tasks you're doing don't feel challenging and you don't feel like you have really many options on how to change that. So I get that totally. And it's really great that you took the initiative to try it somewhere else.
Yeah. I'm really glad I did in the end. I guess I ended up learning that I think firm life is not for me anyway, but trying it from a different perspective. And I learned a lot being sort of the lead associate on these deals and working in many cases with partners who were very kind of laissez-faire and just, Alicia, you handle this, do the deal. Just let me know if you need me. That was good because it was very much the opposite of the situation I'd been in at the first firm.
That's fantastic. And so at what point at the second firm did you start thinking you were ready to make the leap in-house? Was it kind of opportunistically looking, or were you really strategic about it?
At first, it was opportunistically looking. I would always kind of keep an eye open for cool sounding in-house opportunities. And then about a year in, I was lucky also because at Deckert, which was the second firm I was at, we had someone who was a dedicated career coach for people. And I thought it was really great that the firm was realizing, like, this is not where some people want to be for their entire careers. And we want to help them make transitions to whether it's in-house or a nonprofit or whatever it may be. Like, I think a lot of us, definitely me, lawyers at firms, probably hadn't spent enough time thinking about where we wanted to end up, kind of going along with the theme I mentioned at the beginning of just going to law school because I didn't know what else to do. I think I sort of fell into being at a law firm as well. And so it was nice having someone ask you these very basic questions like, what do you like doing? And what kind of industries are you interested in? What kind of day-to-day tasks do you like doing? So with her help, I really started to think about those questions and start to narrow down the types of jobs I'd want to do next. So, for me, I knew I liked this field of kind of social enterprise, impact investing, and maybe even expanding that to like working with startups and small businesses. So that was one big bucket. And then I also knew that I liked travel and working internationally and that kind of field. So with her help, I narrowed it down to kind of those two big categories and then started focusing my search on that, which I can't say enough how helpful that was because I was just sort of shooting in the dark otherwise. And then once I started doing that, I started trying to set up conversations with people who worked in those two fields. And then, like many other people, I found this job through a connection of mine. It's actually my friend whose brother works at On Deck, which is where I am now. And yeah, I had a conversation with him, met the legal team. At the time, the legal team was only 2 people, and we've since grown to 12. So
wow.
Been, a lot of change in 2.5 years. But that's sort of how I ended up here.
I think that's so great that Deckard did that. And I actually think, if I remember correctly, I think they just hired somebody who works specifically on diversity and inclusion.
They did. I got an email about that. That's great. I'm so glad to see that they're making those sorts of changes.
Because I'm trying to get them on the podcast. So
nice.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think that it's so surprising to me, and I don't know why, because I didn't, but it's so surprising to me how many smart, like research type A personalities didn't do the research into what they wanted to do with their lives. Like,
isn't that weird?
It is. It's like shocking to me. Actually, one of the like side projects I'm working on now is I've been taking a lot of coaching certification and career counseling type of courses, and I'm trying to create a workshop that I could bring to law schools to help law school students kind of go through that process. Because I think that their responses at interviews would be so much. I've been doing recruiting interviews for 5 years now. And if I hear one more person like jokingly say someone told them they were good at arguing and that's why they became a lawyer, I like can't really anymore. Do you know what I mean? Because they're joking, but they're not. Like
they're not. Yeah.
And it's just,
I think that's amazing. That would be so helpful for people like me.
Yeah. And I think that it would be helpful I think that it would be great if more law firms did it. And I think that's going to be a harder sell to law firms, but law firms do acknowledge that not everyone's going to make partners. So I think if they could also figure out ways to leverage everybody at their highest potential while they're there, it would be beneficial to everybody. So I'm really excited about this program and I'm hoping to launch it in the new year. But I'm going to get this.
That's super exciting.
Yeah, no, it
Good
is.
for you.
It's taken, it's 2 years of like study to get to the point where
wow.
I feel like I know enough about kind of positive psychology, work-life balance management, mental, like it's all like I've just done so much work on this and talked to so many people. And it's kind of a combination of kind of the general coaching industry, but then also how lawyers think and like putting it all together to make a package that I think lawyers would be receptive to. But that's
so cool.
Yeah, no,
it's funny. So you were saying that it's kind of counterintuitive that people who are so type A and high achieving would end up in these situations where they kind of don't know what brought them there. But I don't know. On the other hand, it's maybe not that surprising because of the fact that those types of people are always just trying to do their best at whatever the given task is without really thinking like, where does this lead me? It's always like, all right, just do your best and it'll work out. So I think a lot of us end up in these positions where that's what we've done. We've kind of just, all right, what's the most impressive thing I can do right now? Okay, go to law school. Okay, then what do I do? All right, everyone's going to OCIs. I'll go to a firm. So I think it's easy to sort of end up in these situations.
Yeah, Tara Moore talks about this like good student mentality where when you've been a good student, you kind of structure your life and your mind around outside, like externally determined goals. And so lawyers who've been good students their whole lives, a lot of us, continue to do that. And the law firm route allows you to do it for so much longer. Because when you're at law school, then you're like, oh, if I'm striving for OCI, this is what I need to do that. And then once you're at a firm, you're like, in order to get to the next stage, this is what I need to do that. And you never like take the step back to think, like, do I care about like that?
Right, exactly.
Like, who is determining that this is like something worth having? And you're like, oh, society seems to think this is a good idea. So
right.
Generally, but I'm glad you agree and that you're seeing the same thing, even with Canadians, because sometimes I wonder if it's a US phenomenon.
I don't think so. I think it's definitely a Canadian thing too.
I wonder if it's a legal thing. I have a couple of lawyers coming on who practice in Europe and then in Australia and Southeast Asia and stuff. And I'm interested to see if they have similar, because I do think there's also different cultural expectations from people.
Definitely. And I wonder if maybe doing law school as part of an undergrad degree rather than postgraduate may affect that. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. But back to your story and what your life looks like now. You've made the big change from big firm to in-house, which I know so many people think is like the holy grail. Could you talk a little bit about what your day is like now and what surprised you most about that transition?
Sure. So I got brought on in part because I was a finance law specialist. So we are a finance company, and a lot of what we do is kind of on the funding source side, making sure that we are capitalized enough in order to make the small business loans that we make. And it's actually pretty complicated. Having worked at the firm and seen all sorts of crazy structured finance transactions, I didn't expect to see that kind of detail in-house, and I definitely have. So it's nice that it's like intellectually challenging and also quite similar to the types of deals I worked on at the firm. That being said, that is probably like a third of what I do these days. I think that's kind of just by virtue of going in-house, and we have a smaller team, so everyone sort of does everything. But it's also that I've realized being in-house that I like a lot of the non-finance stuff a lot as well. So some other things I work on are on the international side. We've expanded to Canada and Australia. We actually have a lawyer in Australia. We don't in Canada. So in Canada, I'm sort of acting as our, general counsel for now. We're still quite small, but that's pretty exciting because it involves all aspects of our operation there, whether it's overseeing regulatory changes, making sure we're compliant with privacy laws, working on partnerships with banks and other, types of companies who work with small businesses, everything from like real estate to IP to employment to vendor contracts, which I love. I like kind of overseeing a project and having other people help me, but it's sort of my thing. Mm-hmm. So I like the international stuff. And then just a lot of day-to-day work. Like I've been working on reviewing our marketing material, and a lot of it also at a company like On Deck, where we grew really quickly. We started off as, startup in the tech space, and there's kind of an inclination to always move quickly, and we're trying to be innovative. So we're trying to get our new products and solutions out there. So on the legal team, we have to often tell people to kind of slow down and make sure that things go through all the right levels of review. And a lot of that is more procedural. Like, how do we create the processes to make sure that people do send things to us and that we can sign off, and that other groups who need to sign off, like finance, get to do so also. And I've actually realized that I like that kind of role, like rethinking processes and how can they be more efficient, and how can they also make sure that everyone who has to buy in gets to do so. So I've been spending a lot more time on that kind of work in the last few months also.
That's really interesting. And do you feel like, how does the training work? Do you feel like it's really kind of on the, job training, or you kind of learn it on your own? Because I feel like you're doing a lot of new things.
It is a lot of new things. Yeah. It's very different from a law firm where you have endless resources and whether it's people who've done this for years, or you can go on, PLC and look up, can I get a form for this document? It's just, there's so much out there that you can use. So in-house, that's not the case. And I think back to your question of what was sort of the most surprising thing is kind of getting comfortable with that inherent risk that will exist all the time in-house, because you can never be 100% sure about the stuff you're working on, at least in most cases.
So can we transition a little into kind of your life around being a lawyer? What is the work-life balance like? How is the culture different in the environment you're working in today?
It's pretty night and day, I'd say. It's definitely a lot of work during the day. So unlike at the firm where it was very up and down and you were sort of dependent on what deals you were working on in terms of timing. So some weeks I would do almost nothing, and then the next week I'd be there till 1 a.m. every night. Here at On Deck, there's constant work. And I think that's just a common thing being in-house. There's always somewhat of a shortage of resources, and we're kind of managing the highest priority items, but there's stuff that just tends to get left behind, and it's hard to get to it when there's so many pressing things going on all the time. So it's very busy during the day, but once I leave, that tends to be it. And I don't usually log back on after about 7 p.m., which is nice. I prefer it because it lets you make plans and have predictability with your schedule. And same goes for weekends. They tend to be pretty quiet also. So I'm really enjoying this new schedule. What was the other aspect of the question? Sorry, Okoma.
That's totally fine.
Is that it? Okay.
I was asking about the culture and
right.
How do people respect your time off? Do you take vacation? Do you, do you enjoy the people you work with? Do you hang out with them after work? Like, what's the full breadth of your experience as a lawyer now?
I feel like I've really seen the two very different models. The culture here is probably my favorite thing about the company. It's such a fun place to work. You have all sorts of types of people. We have our sales team, our tech team, our finance team, obviously legal, and everyone is like very different, and everyone seems to be pretty excited to be working at On Deck. So it's just nice to be in a place where people are very committed to the mission of, helping small businesses. And you see that just being at the office. It's an open office plan. So I wish I could show you. It's kind of the polar opposite of a firm. There's just one floor with a series of desks. It's not even cubicles. It feels like a trading floor, kind of. It's loud, really easy to get distracted. People come up to you all the time. Can't take personal calls ever. Can't shut your door. But I like it because it creates an environment where people are always talking. And, if I have a question for somebody on the tech team, I'll just walk over and ask them. And then someone will overhear us and we'll start talking about something else. And I think because of that, a lot of, good ideas come out of this open environment. Not to mention that it's like a very fun place and there's a lot of social activities. We have every sports team you can imagine. We have the usual startup type props in our kitchen, like ping pong tables, and we have happy hours. So I really enjoy that aspect of working here, that people are engaged and that the company tries to create an environment where people can interact and talk about non-work stuff as well.
That's so great. And it's so great to hear. I mean, people say that it can be that way, but you don't really know until you talk to people who are in that environment if it actually is as different as it can be. And I think it's also a personality thing, because I know that there are some people who could never work in that environment. Did you
definitely
know for sure that you would thrive in this type of culture? Or is that what you were looking for? Or did you kind of get lucky falling into something that matched your personality so well?
A bit of both. I had a feeling that I would do better in a place where I'm interacting with people more, because I found often at the firm that I would just go to my office and close my door and not see people all day. So I had a feeling that I wanted something a bit more social, but it was definitely a transition going from having your space and privacy to a place like this. And I definitely think it's partly personality driven. I know a few other lawyers on the team, it drives them crazy and they just kind of book conference rooms all day so that they can work in peace. Depends on the task as well. Like I think if you're drafting, it can be really tough, but if you're not drafting, it's nice.
That's wonderful. So let's just a little bit talk slightly about kind of something that you found challenging in your journey and information that you wish you had known that would have helped you overcome that challenge earlier.
So one thing that comes to mind is I think being at a firm, it's easy to get pigeonholed into a certain type of work. So for me, I was doing finance, and then even more specifically, I was doing a specific type of finance. And I started getting nervous that, since I wanted to do something like go in-house, and I knew that in many cases it's good to have more general experience for in-house, that was worrisome to me, but I didn't really know what I could do about it, because that's just sort of the law firm model, that you become more and more specialized, at least at the big firms, definitely not the case at all firms. So that was a challenge. And I think also, like, depending on which practice group you choose, going in-house can be more or less difficult. And I don't think I had all the information I needed to make those sorts of decisions coming right out of law school. Kind of going along with what we were talking about earlier about not really thinking through your choices, like what to do post law school. I think going along with that, it's also kind of an information asymmetry issue where, something like the program you're planning, where you're talking to students and having them think about these things in advance, like how do your choices at this stage really affect your future opportunities? I think if I'd done more of that, that would have been very helpful.
Yeah, no, that's another thing that I feel people don't know. And I'm always shocked by the number of people who ask, like during the recruiting season, like, what do you do and what is like your job? Because I don't think that necessarily needs to be a question you wait till you're at a law firm to ask. Like, you can learn that information before you even apply to law school.
Right.
So one of the series that I'm doing is a day in the life of series, and it kind of goes through different practice groups and what people's lives are like and what their opportunities are after they do that type of work. And I think
that's awesome.
I'm just really just trying to push out this information so that people are making more informed decisions and don't feel like they're blindly accepting the opportunities that are put before them because someone's told them that those are good opportunities.
Exactly. And yeah, being at law school, I would have had no idea what kind of work a lawyer actually did, at least a transactional lawyer. It's so different than what you do in class, where you're learning these cases and, looking at precedent and understanding how to argue. It's just completely different than deal work. So I would have loved a class or a session where we talked more about what we actually did, what lawyers actually do.
Yeah, I think it'll be really great. It's just trying to find the lawyers who I think are really representative of the different groups and not just of different firms.
Right.
But also, I'd love to get them all in like a round table where we can just talk about things like, what's your schedule like? What do people do after they leave your group? And just go back and forth and really get all of them to contribute. It's kind of a logistical nightmare to plan, but I think it'll be really useful once I get it all hammered out.
Definitely.
That's so great. And I appreciate you coming on. I usually like to end the podcast with a bit of advice. So kind of the best advice you would give somebody who is now kind of at that point where you were at, where they realize that they don't really see themselves where they are long term. They think there could be something better, but they don't know the first step to take. What would you advise them to do to get on the right path?
I think I've said this a few times probably, but I think it's really important to be proactive about your own career, which is probably kind of obvious, but I guess it wasn't to me because I didn't do it for a really long time. But kind of force yourself to think about what you like, what you want to do. I think the only way to know that is to try different things. So I guess related to that advice is to try as much different stuff as possible. Even if you end up not liking it, at least you can cross it off. I think, there are some people who know what they want to do. Most of us don't. So the better picture of that you can get, the better, and just, try to make your next move something more in line with your eventual goal. It may not be your dream job that you're going to get right out of a firm, but if it gets you closer to it, then I think that's still a success. And just kind of going along with the idea of being proactive, like just find other people who are doing the type of work you're interested in, talk to them. That's how you will make connections, and they'll, keep you in mind when there ends up being an opening at where they are. So I know, like I was talking about what I'm doing it on deck now, working with these different groups, I kind of realized that's what I liked. So I went to the GC and said, can I do more of this work? And kind of tried to show how I think it would help the company. And, he agreed. So now I'm doing more of that. So it's been like a late lesson learned for me, but one that I've been trying to implement more since I've moved here.
I love that. I love that advice so much, because I think that so many people get kind of stuck because they don't know what the end goal looks like. And I really want to encourage people you don't need to know necessarily where you're going to end up, but you need to know the direction you want to be heading and just be taking steps in that direction. Because otherwise, you're definitely
exactly
there, you know?
Right.
It's
right.
it kind of seems obvious, but just like you, I didn't think of that. I was very settled to just complain about it not working out, but like not really.
Same here.
It's
yeah. If it wasn't the perfect job, I wasn't interested, which was the wrong attitude.
Exactly. And but also knew I wasn't qualified yet for the perfect job necessarily.
Right.
I just felt so overwhelmed by the whole process. But I think that that's a lot about the linear thinking of lawyers. And I think there's just so many opportunities to be happy in your work and thereby happier in your life if you just sit down and take it one step at a time. So I really appreciate the practicality of that advice. And thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat with us today and share your story. And I'm so excited to get to catch up with you and hear that you're doing so well.
Thanks so much. It was great chatting with you as well.
Yeah, and hopefully I will see you at FinCon next year.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at akoma, OKEOMA, @thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!